Dungeons & Dragons, or D&D, is a fantasy role-playing game, originally designed by Gary Gygax and Dave Arneson, and first published in 1974 by Tactical Studies Rules, TSR. The game has been published by Wizards of the Coast since 1997. D&D's publication is widely regarded as the beginning of modern role-playing games and the role-playing game industry. An immediate predecessor of D&D was a set of medieval miniature rules written by Jeff Perrin. These were expanded by Gary Gygax, whose additions included a fantasy supplement, before the game was published as Chainmail. Dave Arneson began a medieval game where players control individuals instead of armies. Arneson used Chainmail to resolve combats. As play progressed, Arneson added such innovations as character classes, experience points, level advancement, armor class, and others. Arneson introduced Gygax to his Blackmoor game, and then the two collaborated on developing the fantasy game, the role-playing game, RPG, that became Dungeons & Dragons, with the final writing and preparation of the text being done by Gygax. Many Dungeons & Dragons elements also appear in hobbies of the mid to late 20th century. Character-based role-playing, for example, can be seen in improvisational theater. Game world simulations were well developed in wargaming. Fantasy milieux specifically designed for gaming could be seen in Glorantha's board games, among others. However, ultimately, Dungeons & Dragons represents a unique blending of these elements. The theme of D&D was influenced by mythology, pulp fiction, and contemporary fantasy authors of the 1960s and 1970s. The presence of halflings, elves, dwarves, half-elves, orcs, dragons, and the like often draw comparisons to the work of J.R.R. Tolkien. Gygax maintained that he was influenced very little by Lord of the Rings, stating that he included these elements as a marketing move to draw on the popularity of the work. The magic system, in which wizards memorize spells that are used up once cast and must be rememorized the next day, was heavily influenced by the Dying Earth stories and novels of Jack Vance. The original alignment system, which grouped all characters and creatures into law, neutrality, and chaos, was derived from the novel 3 Hearts and 3 Lions by Poul Anderson. Other influences include the works of Robert E. Howard, Edgar Rice Burroughs, A. Merritt, H. P. Lovecraft, Fritz Leiber, L. Sprague de Camp, Fletcher Pratt, Roger Zelazny, and Michael Moorcock. In 1997, TSR created the first element of a two-pronged strategy that would divide the D&D game for over 2 decades. A D&D Basic Set boxed edition was introduced that cleaned up the presentation of the essential rules, made the system understandable to the general public, and was sold in a package that could be stocked in toy stores. In 1978, Advanced Dungeons & Dragons, AD&D, was published, which brought together the various published rules, options, and corrections, then expanded them into a definitive united game for hobbyist gamers. The basic set directed players who exhausted the possibilities of that game to switch to the advanced rules. The term advanced describes the more complex rules and did not imply for higher level gaming abilities. Between 1977 and 1979, 3 hardcover rulebooks, commonly referred to as the core rulebooks, were released. The Player's Handbook, the Dungeon Master's Guide, and the Monster Manual. Several supplementary books were published throughout the 1980s, notably Unearthed Arcana in 1985 that included a large number of new rules. Beginning with a French-language edition in 1982, Dungeons & Dragons has been translated into many languages beyond the original English. By 2004, consumers had spent more than $1 billion on D&D products, and the game had been played by more than 20 million people. At various times in its history, D&D has received negative publicity, in particular from some Christian groups for alleged promotion of such practices as devil worship, witchcraft, suicide, and murder, and for naked breasts and drawings of female humanoids in the original AD&D manuals. These controversies led TSR to remove many potentially controversial references and artwork when releasing the second edition of AD&D. Many of these references, including the use of the names devils and demons, were reintroduced in the third edition. The moral panic over the game also led to problems for fans of D&D who faced social ostracism. unfair treatment, and false association with the occult and Satanism, regardless of an individual fan's actual religious affiliation and beliefs. Dungeons & Dragons has also been the subject of rumors regarding players having difficulty separating fantasy from reality, even leading to psychotic episodes. The most notable of these was the saga of James Dallas Egbert III, the facts of which were fictionalized in the novel Mazes and Monsters and later made into a TV movie starring Tom Hanks. The game was also blamed for some of the actions of Chris Pritchard, who was convicted in 1990 of murdering his stepfather. Research by various psychologists has concluded that no harmful effects are related to the playing of D&D.